Hi, everybody. Hello, welcome. So we are Portis. I'm Tom. I'm the CEO. This is Itay. He's the CTO. So before we begin, we'd like to tell a little bit about Portis, what the problem that we solve is. So right now, whenever you're using a decentralized application, one of the problems that you currently face is that your new user has to go through a lot of friction to start using your dApp. They have to You probably show them like some sort of model window saying, hey, you got to go install MetaMask, and here's a list of instructions on how to do that. And we wouldn't stand for something like that if you're using any other standard web application. If it's Uber or Instagram, there's no instruction on how to use Uber. It just works. So we want to offer developers the same way to, the same capabilities to offer that to their users. So instead of asking the user to go and install something, we take a kind of a different approach. We tell the developers to work a little hard. So once you integrate our SDK, you get a standard Web3 provider. It's just 2 lines of code, and it's the same Web3 methods that you know and love, and nothing changes. But what happens is when the user gets to your, sorry, it's a bit dumb. Yeah. So what happens when the user gets to your dApp, then they're getting the built-in Web3 wallet. And everything is done using end-to-end encryption. So the user is in absolute control over their private keys, not the dApp, not us. So he creates a wallet inside the browser, and then he encrypts it using a secret which never leaves his device. So he sends us the encrypted wallet so he can easily access it from his phone, from his desktop, all in his browser without installing anything, with a very familiar username and password login. So to demonstrate the difference between building a dApp with Portis and without Portis and what's the value you can get out of it, we took OpenSea's platform. They created something called Shipslog, which demonstrates their API, which is great. We use it for our collectibles. That's how we show you all the cool NFTs that you have in our wallet. And they created something called the Shipslog, which is a basic dApp that just grabs stuff from their SDK and displays it, and you can bid on different NFTs. So what Itay here is going to do is just show you what happens right now. When you click on buy, this is usually what you get. You get like some sort of alert saying, hey, you got to go install MetaMask, Trust, Coinbase, and good luck for the user. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to create a dApp with Portis and show you how that works. So we go to the docs, and as you can see, it is like 4 lines of code. So Itay, the first thing he has to do is register a dApp. Now, the reason you register a dApp is because we want to have a smooth transition for the user, which we also feel is very important. So we can show you like the dApp logo and name and description when you sign in, so you know the context of where you're coming from. You'll see that in a minute once we embed Portis. So he created this new dApp, called it Shipslog. And he's taking those 4 lines of code and just adding them to his dApp. Now, you have to install the Web3, the Portis Web3 SDK, and then just initialize it with the API key that we give you. That will show the relevant, dApp name and logo. And so Itay is going to do that, but he's going to do it a bit differently because the OpenSea SDK, they initialize the Web3 object. So he's not going to initialize the Web3 objects. He's initializing the OpenSea SDK, and he's passing into it the Web3 provider, which is Portis. So it's a little bit different, but when you're building a dApp, it's just going to be those 4 lines of code, unless you're using the wonderful OpenSea SDK. And so now if we go back to our dApp, so we go back to our dApp, and you'll see that now we get a pop-up saying, okay, that's great, let's log in with Portis. Let's, and the user gets this new screen, standard email and password sign-in. Creating an account is just the same, just another password. And he's in. He has a Web3 provider. If he wants to buy something, he can just click on it, and he gets this nice little iframe that's showing him, like, you can confirm the payment. This is all inside the browser. And if, for instance, we show it how it looks on mobile, then, again, it's all very, familiar and easy for the user. He didn't have to install anything, and it just works. But and if we go back to the dashboard, you'll see that after you register a dApp, we also allow you to kind of test to see that you're communicating properly. And because we did this Web3 method, which was get accounts for that matter, then everything works great, and you can continue building knowing that everything works. But this is not a good experience. The talk of the dApps is building for the mainstream, building for the masses. You don't go into a web application and get a login page, like a login window as you start. You have to have some sort of context of where you are. So we want to show the user some sort of login window where he can choose between the different login methods, because in our eyes, in terms of user experience, that's how it should be done. The user should always know what he's doing. So what Itay did is creating some sort of model that will display the different Web3 methods. So instead of just initializing Web3 as you start your application, we have some sort of like model window where the user chooses how he wants to sign in. And once he chooses that particular Web3 provider, then we use that from that moment on. In this case, it's going to be Portis and MetaMask, who we all know and love. So in this case, Itay still doesn't have MetaMask enabled on his browser, so we only see the Portis sign-in. Go back for a second. Okay, so once he enables MetaMask, then now we see both of them. So for the user, once he comes into the app, he has a login. The first thing that he sees is how to log in into the app, which makes sense because that's usually the experience you have for most applications out there. So once Itay chooses Portis, then he logs in, and then whenever he's doing an action, he doesn't suddenly have a login page. He's logged in, he knows what's going on. And we feel that's very important to make sure that the users have an experience which is familiar and just like using regular Web 2 applications. So again, he can confirm the action, and that's great. But we still feel there's something missing because the user has no indication of the state. You know, he just signed in, but he doesn't know that he's signed in. He can't really remember that. So that's also something that we want to solve. So what Itay is going to do right now is going to add another element here. So before that, I need to give a bit of a preface. So one of the things that we also give with Portis is the ability to ask the user for their email. So we're a standard Web3 provider, but we're starting to add more and more features which we see as valuable for the dApp developers. So one of them, for instance, is something we call Scope, which is if you ever develop with using the Facebook API or for Google or for Android, you know that you can ask the user to reveal some information to you. So when you initialize Portis, you can pass along a scope of email. So what's going to happen now when Itay is signing in to, hold on, it's updating the API. The correct one, yeah. So when he's signing into his Portis account, he's going to get a question from the dApp, from Portis. And we're going to tell him, look, this application would like access to your email. And he can accept it, he can decline, he will allow it for now. And if he allows that, we can now give the user something more than just his wallet address. We can tell him, okay, this is your wallet address you're connected with, this is your email address, and you can also open your wallet, which is something we highly recommend when you're using Portis. We offer a functionality called Show Portis, which allows the user to always be able to see their wallet, know how much balance they have, which network they're on. These are the kind of things that when you're thinking about user experience, you got to give the user that ease of mind, that he knows what's going on, where am I in the application, where am I going, what's happening. So in addition to that, there are other things that we've added to Portis which we feel are valuable so that users can have an easy experience. One of them, for instance, is allowing the users to add funds to their wallet. This should also be something which is simple. If you're telling a user, look, you want to have more Ether, then you got to go to an exchange. And this is your wallet address, and you got to understand that when you withdraw the exchange, like all of that flow is very complicated. It's kind of a hassle if you're a developer, and if you're not a developer, that's simply not going to happen. So what we allow you is to buy Ether straight to your wallet using using Wire, using Wire. And so the user can pay with a debit card, and the money just goes straight to their wallet. And over time, that flow is going to be even smoother and smoother to the user, to the point, and that's where we hope we can go, to the point where users are not even aware of the fact that they're using a blockchain application. They know they have this user and email for using these kind of decentralized blockchain applications, yeah, but beyond that, that's all they need to know. Later on, we're going to be adding, for instance, gas relay, which allows the dApp owners to sponsor the gas fees for their users. Now, obviously, that raises a lot of interesting questions, like how do you deal with Sybil attacks? For instance, I'm a dApp, I'm sponsoring my dApp for 5 Ether for my users, but then some competitor dApp comes along and creates 1 million users, cleans me out dry. There are ways to deal with those kind of attacks. Like if the user does have some sort of history and reputation, then we're gonna let the dApp know that he has a good history and reputation, then yeah, you can probably sponsor gas fees. That's not an attack. But if it's a new user, then we might want to make him jump through some hoops, some KYC, some CAPTCHA, maybe ask him to sign into his Google account. These are all things that, yeah, sure, the dApp could do itself, but we believe that dApps shouldn't focus on that. You have a lot on your plate already. You're building a dApp. You have to worry about the smart contract, about the usability of your actual application, not about the onboarding and signing transaction and the parts where when you're building a Web 2 application, you have those kind of solutions. If you're doing credit card, you have Stripe. If you're doing SMS messages, you have Twilio. You don't rebuild the wheel every time. So that's, in our eyes, that has to be the situation where you're talking about dealing with the Web3 and the wallet and everything that surrounds that. So in terms of the networks that we support, so you can use the standard networks. Like we support some of the networks built in, which means you can just put in the network name and it works. But you can also work with either a private network or a local host. At the end of the day, what happens with Portis, just let me reiterate for a second. So when the user wants to sign a Web3 method, what really happens behind the scenes? So he's sending that transaction to the iframe, which contains the unencrypted private key, which the user decrypted with his email and password. We then sign the transaction using this private key and relay that signed transaction to wherever you tell us. If you just say Ethereum mainnet, then we'll use Infura and send it to the Ethereum mainnet. If you tell me, oh, localhost, we'll send it there. So you can use it for whatever project you want. And if we're talking about networks, for instance, so we've been talking to dApps, and we have a dApp using us called Auctionity. Now, Auctionity is doing auctions of NFTs, like live auctions, and they need to do real-time bidding. Now, you can't really do real-time bidding on the Ethereum network. That's a bit of a problem, but we need to solve that for them because they're moving the NFT on the mainnet, but they're doing the bidding on a private network which costs nothing, but it's still verifiable because it's public. Everybody can check that their bid went through, yada, yada, but they want it to be super fast and cheap and cost nothing. So with other solutions that exist right now, they have to tell the user, and here's more friction because you have to tell the user each time, here's a window saying, okay, so go to the configuration of your provider, choose a custom RPC node, that's going to be us. Now you're bidding, so you have to do that, and then come back to the mainnet once you win the token and the NFT and you want to claim it. That's unacceptable. It's like telling a user who's using a node to decide which, I don't know, which port to use or whatever, because you're using node. That doesn't make sense. So we added something called Change Network, where basically we don't let, I don't know if you noticed, the user doesn't choose their network. Now, if you're a power user, that might be a bit like, I want to choose my network. But if you're an average user, you're not really, capable of dealing with that kind of stuff. So we're letting the developer choose to change the network for the user. Now, when he's signing a transaction, he sees which network he's on. So he can't really do anything, weird in that way. But you don't ask the user to go around and do that. So the scope of the email, the change network, and a lot of other similar solutions that we offer is a way we feel like the developers can easily offer their users a more smooth experience. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd like to hear if you have any questions about how Portis works. Yeah, right, go ahead. Oh, wait a second. I think they want you to use the mic.
If we can get you up to the microphone, that way everybody can hear you.
Yeah, they want to also probably have it recorded for prosperity.
How are you guys working with the KYC module with Wire as well?
What do you mean, how do we work with the KYC model?
So you guys, users can buy Ethereum directly via, and you have Wire in the background facilitating the purchase?
Yes.
Are you also integrating the KYC token model?
KYC, well, the KYC token model is implemented, I think, by Wire itself. They're the one who are putting in the token. But yeah, we're using their API. And
Okay.
yeah. Any other questions? No? So I hope you all have a chance to try out Portis in the hackathon. We do have 2 bounties going on. And the first bounty is if you just use Portis in your dApp, as long as like you put it on some sort of live net so we can see it. We have Gitcoin bounties that you can claim, and you can just get some ether for doing that. And the other bounty is if you actually build a dApp which is focused on the mainstream and we find it cool and really, some sort of dApp that is really trying to, not exploit, but use the fact that there is a solution that is mainstream accessible to build something for the average user, for the mainstream population, not just the crypto population, then those 2 winning dApps will also win $750 and $250 respectively. And you can check out everything on the Kauri website, where you can see all the different bounties, and check out our documentations. And we're up in booths. Come check us out, and you can also get some Portis socks if you want to. Thank you very much.